You've tuned in to Family Church Radio with Pastor Jimmy Scroggins of Family Church. Join us as Pastor Jimmy teaches through the Bible.
Whatever you make and you tithe, you'll be given $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, $20,000. Some of you could give more than that. And you start to thinking when you start writing those checks, or they start looking at those automatic withdrawals, and you start thinking, man, I could buy a car at CarMax with that money. I could take a vacation with that money. I could redo my kitchen with that money. And that's true. But when you give money to the kingdom of Jesus, you're investing in the kingdom of Jesus. Blessed are you.
Jesus offers forgiveness of sin for free. His work on the cross already paid the price for your redemption. But that doesn't mean following him won't cost you. He was upfront about this. As Pastor Jimmy will explain in today's message, your money, time, and resources all could be invested in yourself, your family, or whatever you desire. But when you follow Jesus, he wants all of you. That's a steep price to pay, but it's worth it to experience his kingdom both here and now, as well as in eternity. Well, let's join Pastor Jimmy in the book of Luke chapter 6 as he continues his message, Jesus is the one who gives hope.
This is the sermon on the plain or the level place. And a lot of people confuse these two sermons, but they're actually two different events, because one is specifically said to be preached on a mountain and one is specifically preached on a level place or on a plain after they came down off of the mountain. Also, the sermons have two completely different points of emphasis, although they have some similarities. This is the sermon on the plain. And one of the key points in the Sermon on the Plain is that there is a cost to following Jesus. You hear what I'm saying? Now, many of you, this is your first time to Family Church. Some of you aren't really Christians. Some of you aren't that religious. Some of you are checking it out. And I'm really glad that you're here, because I'm going to go ahead and tell you up front, if you're considering becoming a Christian or you want to sign up with the brand of Christianity that Family Church represents, we believe and we understand from the Bible, there is a cost to following Jesus. There is. It will cost you something to follow Jesus. You say, well, Pastor Jimmy, that's really negative. And we come to church to be lifted up, and you're bumming me out right now. Why would Jesus preach a sermon about that? That doesn't sound like a very effective, attractive message. Well, let's see about it. All of us need to hear this today, just like they did back then. This is Luke chapter 6. We're going to start reading in verse 12. Here's what the Word of God says. In these days, he, Jesus, went out to the mountain to pray. And all night he continued in prayer to God. And when day came, he called his disciples and chose from them 12, whom he named apostles. Simon, whom he named Peter, and Andrew his brother, and James and John, and Philip, and Bartholomew, and Matthew, and Thomas, and James, the son of Alphaeus, and Simon, who is called the Zealot, and Judas, the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. Let's pause right there. So what happens? Jesus goes up on the mountain. He prays all night. Why is he praying all night? Because he has a group of people he calls disciples that are all around him. And there's a bunch of them, but he's about to pick 12 special ones that are going to be used by God in a special way. He chooses 12 from this large group and calls them apostles. So what's a disciple? Well, a disciple, as you might know, a disciple comes from the Greek word mathetes, and that simply means learner. So if you become a disciple of Jesus, it means you are a student of Jesus. You are a learner. But then he takes out of those disciples, those learners, he chooses 12 whom he calls apostles. And the word apostle comes from the Greek word apostolos, and that means one who is sent. So out of all of the learners, the students who are following around, listening, taking notes, drinking in what he's saying, he chooses 12 apostles that he's going to train in a special way, an elevated way, and these are going to be the ones that are going to send out to spread the movement of Christianity all over the world. And indeed that happened. And you sitting in this room right now are a testimony to their effectiveness in getting that done. But he tells these guys it's going to cost you something. And why would he say that? Well, remember some of these guys, if you've been following along with us in the book of Luke, you remember a few chapters ago, Jesus called Simon Peter, and Peter left his fishing business to come and follow Jesus. And you remember James and John, they were working and Jesus said, come follow me. They literally left their boats and their nets behind, got up and followed Jesus, leaving their business. They became unemployed and followed Jesus to be one of his disciples, now apostles. You remember the story of Matthew, also called Levi. Matthew was working as a Roman IRS agent, and Jesus came and he said, I want you to leave your job, quit your job. That was a lucrative profession. Quit that and come and follow me and do something different. These guys had already given up a lot. They had already left their job and their businesses. They had already given up a lot to follow Jesus. And now Jesus is saying, you're going to be one of my special 12. Let's continue. Luke chapter 6, verse 17. And he came down with them and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea and Jerusalem and the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon, who came to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And all the crowd sought to touch him, for power came out from him and healed them all. Remember what is happening. Jesus goes up on the mountain, he prays all night, he picks the 12 apostles. Now they come down off of the mountain to this level place. Now when they come down on the mountain, you can use your imagination. You can picture the 12 apostles who've been chosen out of the larger group. When they come down off the mountain with Jesus, they're strutting a little bit. You might picture them coming down on the mountain like that scene in The Right Stuff. Jesus out front, the 12 apostles behind him, and they're strutting. We're the 12. And they're coming down the mountain. When they get down the mountain, Jesus starts doing miracles. He's healing people. The power is coming out of him so strong, Jesus doesn't even have to look at anybody or say anything. They just kind of get into the arena where Jesus is, and the aura and the power emanating off of Jesus heals people of diseases and casts out demons. It's incredible. So these 12 newly minted apostles, they come down to the level place where the Sermon on the Plain is. And they're not the only ones there. There are people there from all over Israel. It says people have come from Tyre and Sidon and Jerusalem. Now, all these people from all over the nation had come just to hear Jesus. You say, well, how far is that? Well, Sidon is about 50 miles away from Galilee. And Jerusalem is about 80 miles away from Galilee. So you're talking about multiple days of foot travel just to get there to hear Jesus talk and to see him do these miracles. And so all these 12 disciples have to be thinking, we are rolling. Can you imagine the notes they're sending home to their wives, their girlfriends, their moms? We are rolling. I've just been promoted. I am now one of the special 12 apostles. We don't know what apostles are yet, but whatever they are, we're elite. We have swag. We have momentum. We are with the man, Jesus. He is the man. And he just picked us, which makes us the man also. And we're about to take over. Look at that guy. All this power, all he has to do is walk across people, get in his area, and they start getting healed. All this healing, all these people from all over the country. We're laying the groundwork for a revolution in Israel to kick the Romans out of Israel once and for all. This is the man. He's powerful, and we're his guys. And when we take over, guess who he's putting in charge? The 12. We're on our way. Well, Jesus apparently knows what they're thinking. So Jesus pulls his disciples really close. And all the people in the crowds are all around him. But he pulls his 12 guys into a huddle, and he tells them some important things that they need to know. He adjusts their perspective about what it's going to be like to follow him. Let's keep reading again. Luke 6, verse 20. And he lifted up his eyes on his disciples and said, blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you shall be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you and when they exclude you and revile you and spurn your name as evil on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven, for so their fathers did to the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you shall be hungry. Woe to you who are full or are rich, for you shall have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you shall be hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. Woe to you when all people speak well of you, for so their fathers did to the false prophets. So Jesus, as he teaches this sermon on the plain, he says, guys, I know you think you've got swag and momentum and you're with the man, but if you follow me, it's gonna cost you something. I know you've already left your fishing business, you've already left your jobs, but you wanna follow me. It's gonna get harder before it gets easier. Some of you can identify with that. For some of you, following Jesus has already cost you something. There are people in our church, and following Jesus has cost them relationships with their family. Some of you, it's hurt your relationship with your spouse. Some of you, it's hurt your relationship with your kids or your parents or your coworkers. It might actually cost you something if you get serious about your relationship with Jesus. And here's some things I think we can learn from this text if you're in that situation. Number one, Jesus sees your struggle. If you haven't taken notes, I'd encourage you to get out that listening guide, fill in some blanks, follow along. Number one, Jesus sees your struggle. Jesus sees your struggle. Many people think the Christian life is going to be free of struggle. Last week, Pastor Derek, who taught so brilliantly last week, read a verse where Jesus said, I will give you rest. The burden is easy and the yoke is light. And many of us are Christians, but we still feel all these big challenges. Some of you have worked the best way you know how to raise your kids to love God and to walk with God. But as your kids have got older, they've actually seemed to turn their back on everything you tried to teach them to do, and it breaks your heart. Some of you have worked to have a good marriage. You've done everything you know to do, but there's still this tension. Some of you have tried to have integrity at your job, but your boss still hates your guts. Some of you have tried hard to talk to people about Jesus, but nobody seems to really connect with what you're saying. Some of you say, hey, I've asked God to heal me or my loved one over and over, but he's not healing them. What's up with that?
This message you're hearing is just one from Pastor Jimmy Scroggins of Family Church in South Florida. If you're interested in learning more, head over to gofamilychurch.org. If you look for us on Instagram, you'll find us by typing @GoFamilyChurch. Pastor Jimmy has more to share with you in today's message, so don't go anywhere. We're so glad you tuned in today to discover and pursue God's design for your life, right here on Family Church Radio.
Why do we as Christians, what good is it to be a Christian if you're going to run into diseases that you can't heal and prayers that don't get answered and sins that we can't overcome and sadness and depression that we can't shake off and enemies and mean people that won't leave us alone? Why? Where is the power? Where is the authority? Well, there's a theological term that Jesus is implying in this text. The theological term, I learned this in seminary, is called over-realized eschatology. What in the heck is over-realized eschatology? Well, eschatology is the study of the last things or the end times. It's what happens when Jesus returns. That's eschatology. And we believe in that. We believe that one day Jesus will return. We believe that Jesus will end death and disease and racism and poverty and war, that he will wipe all the tears from our eyes. We believe that about eschatology, the end times. That's our eschatology. But all of that is in the future. And over-realized eschatology is the belief that things are going to be right now like they're going to be in heaven. The belief that everything that's going to be true in heaven should be true right now. And that's bad theology because we live in a fallen world with fallen, sinful people who've been sinning all over each other for millennia, and we have a fallen world. And so embracing an over-realized eschatology is going to lead to a lot of disillusionment and a lot of frustration because people get frustrated with why aren't things happening right now? Why aren't they true now? Everything that's true in heaven, why isn't it true right now? Because that's not what Jesus taught. So if I follow Jesus, are you telling me, Pastor Jimmy, that my life isn't going to be easy all the time if I follow Jesus? In this sermon on the plain, Jesus said at times it's going to be the opposite of easy if you follow him. Which brings us to number 2 on your notes. Jesus is upfront about the cost. Jesus is upfront about the cost. Now, I really like this, and a lot of people appreciate this concept of being upfront about the cost. So in 1993, a new concept in selling used cars came on the scene. It was called CarMax. How many of you ever worked at or shopped at a CarMax? Would you ever raise your hand? Yeah, so I have to. So a CarMax, what happened at CarMax, Used car salesmen back then were kind of shady. I'm not saying that they're not now, but back then everybody was kind of seen as a shady business. And the executives at Circuit City, remember the old electronics store? Circuit City, those executives came up with this concept. Everybody needs to buy used cars. If we could come up with a better concept, we could have a bang-up business. And so they invented CarMax out of Circuit City. And they, obviously, CarMax is doing better than Circuit City, because good idea, guys. But the wrinkle, what they did is they built car dealerships that look just like a new car dealership. Showroom, big inventory, professional staff. And their whole wrinkle was no haggle upfront pricing. So when you went onto the car lot, they just had the price on the sticker. And at first, it included everything, including fees, taxes, everything. That was the drive it off the lot price, because you know how it is right now. You go to try to buy a car, and they go, oh, this car's $32,000. You go, really? How much is it to drive it off the lot? Oh, it's $47,000. You're like, man, that's kind of a big difference, you know? But what CarMax did is they said, we're going to take all the haggling and the frustration out of it. We're just going to give you one price up front so you know exactly what you're dealing with. That's a pretty good idea. People liked it. That's why CarMax exists. Maybe Circuit City should have tried that strategy. I don't know. Jesus is upfront about the cost for following him. As you read through the book of Luke, you'll see more and more of this. In Luke chapter 9, verse 23, Jesus said, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. That's the cost. If you want to follow Jesus, deny yourself, take up your cross. What do people do on crosses? They die on crosses. Take up your cross, come and die, follow me. Luke chapter 21, Jesus said, you will be hated by all for my name's sake. So Jesus says, don't be shocked if you end up hungry or poor or grieving, or if you end up having a bad reputation because of Jesus. So here on the Sermon on the Mount, he makes these two lists, the blessings and the woes. Both lists are counterintuitive. The things that Jesus says will make you blessed sound bad. The things that Jesus says will bring you woe sound good. It's counterintuitive. So what are the blessings? He says the blessings. He said, blessed are you when you are poor. Poor. You think about this, back in the first century in Palestine, a lot of the people he's talking to in the audience were pretty poor. Some of you may be poor. Some of you may be poor or poorer because of your commitment to the kingdom of Jesus. You think about the people he's talking to. You guys are going to be fishers of men, he said. I'm sure Peter, James, and John had the thought when they went home and told their wives, hey man, we just quit our job, we left our business. You're not going to fish anymore? That's how we've made a living all these years. I know, but we met this guy named Jesus. He said he's going to teach us to fish for men. I bet the wives are like, man, that sounds awesome. Thank you. This is going to be great. Jesus says, I'm teaching you to do something better. Some of you are like that. You hang around family church. We pass the buckets. You give online. Some of you have learned to give. You give money. And if you tithe, and a lot of you do tithe. Some of you are learning to tithe. Some of you are thinking about it. If you tithe, think about your money. If you tithe, and you put your income together with your spouses, if you together make, $50,000 or $80,000 or $100,000 or $200,000 or more, however much you make together, whatever you make, and you tithe, you'll be given $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, $20,000. Some of you can give more than that. And you start to thinking, when you start writing those checks, or they start looking at those automatic withdrawals, and you start thinking, man, I could buy a car at CarMax with that money. I could take a vacation with that money. I could redo my kitchen with that money. And that's true. But when you give money to the kingdom of Jesus, you're investing in the kingdom of Jesus. Blessed are you, Jesus says. Yours is the kingdom of heaven. That's why he says, listen, blessed are you when you're hungry. Blessed are you when you're grieving, because one day you're not going to be grieving, you're going to be happy. Blessed are you when you get canceled, okay, because of the Son of Man. But Jesus says, when and if you experience these things in the Christian life, those aren't signs of failure of your faith. Those are signs of blessing. Throughout history and around the world, right now, Christians are being persecuted and killed. They're losing their jobs. They're losing their families. People throughout 2,000 years of Christian history have been persecuted. I mean, way more than they ever have been in America. So in America, we're persecuted too. Okay. Feel how persecuted it is right now? You know how persecuted we are? Hey, somebody needs to shut the door. The air conditioner's getting out. They need to turn down the music. That's how persecuted we are. It doesn't mean that there's not a cost, but we're not persecuted in the same way that people are around the world. In America, we've been shielded from those things, but things are changing. You feel it, don't you? Things are changing in this world, and we have to be ready. We have to count the cost. We have to be ready to do whatever Jesus asks of us. And the temptation is always to compromise. The temptation is always to water down what we believe, to back away from our deeply held Christian beliefs, to close our mouths and let the world silence us so that we don't ruffle anybody's feathers. We step away, because when we step away from those things, we also step away from the cost of following Jesus, which brings me to number 3 on your notes. Jesus is warning us. Jesus warns against compromise. Jesus warns against compromise, and he lists all of the woes that happen to people when they compromise. He says, hey, woe to you if you're rich because you've compromised. Woe to you if you're satisfied because you've compromised. Woe to you if you're laughing now because you've compromised. Woe to you if you're honored now because you've compromised. The point is that when the pressure comes, all of us are tempted to back off of our commitments to Jesus. We get a little bit embarrassed by how old-fashioned or out of step some of our Christian beliefs might actually feel. And we feel like we just need to tone it down and duck our head and just sort of back off. Hey, can I tell you what I hope we'll do at Family Church? At Family Church, I hope we don't back off. I hope we press in. At Family Church, I hope we don't back up. I hope we double down. Double down on our Christian beliefs. Get more clear. You see what compromise gets you according to Jesus? Compromise gets you woe. Being clear and being faithful makes you blessed. Even if it costs you something in the short term in this world, the blessings will accrue to you in the next. And the question, I guess, as a Christian is, do you really believe in heaven? Because in heaven, that's where the blessings really come. And Jesus says, woe to you if you're compromising. Pretty strong stuff. But why would believers endure it? Because, man, it's hard. Socially, it's hard with friends. It's hard with relationships, with jobs, with finances. Why would we pay the cost? Is it really worth it? How can that be? And number 4 tells you why. Number 4 on your notes, Jesus promises you a better future. Jesus promises you a better future. And he uses these time words very strategically in this little sermon on the plain. Verse 21, Jesus says, blessed are you if you are hungry now, or if you're weeping now. Verse 25, it says, woe to you if you're full now. Woe to you if you're laughing now. Because Jesus is saying how it is now is not how it's always going to be. It's one way now, it's going to be another way later. So that's what you have to think. Which is more important, now or later? There's a different day coming. Look at what Jesus calls it. I'm going to tell you how he proves it. So you would miss this if you're not careful reading the text. Verse 22, Jesus says, blessed are you if you get canceled because of the Son of Man. The Son of Man.
You've been listening to Family Church Radio with Pastor Jimmy Scroggins. The message you heard today is just one from a series called Jesus is the One. This is a study in the Gospel of Luke. Luke was inspired by the Holy Spirit to write an orderly account of Jesus' life, proving that Jesus is the One. Who is Jesus to you? Jesus is the one who can help us, who rescues, who calls, who forgives, and who gives hope. We hope that Jesus is all these things to you and so much more. But maybe you found yourself listening to Family Church Radio because you're still searching. You're still feeling a void within. And that's okay. We've all started from somewhere. But please, reach out and connect with us. We want to share Jesus with you and answer any questions you might have. We want you to discover God's design for your life and walk in it. You are important and loved more than you can imagine. There are multiple ways you can get connected with us. If you want to talk to someone in person, you can call 561-650-7400 to speak to one of us. Again, that's 561-650-7400. If you prefer a digital connection, just type gofamilychurch.org in the search bar, and it will take you right to us. Once there, Notice the Plan Your Visit link. It will take you to an easy-to-fill-out form so we can get in touch with you. While you're there, we invite you to stay a while to do some reading or listening. Pastor Jimmy Scroggins' other teachings, like this one, can be found there as well. Do you live in Palm Beach, Martin, or St. Lucie counties in South Florida? Why not personally attend one of our services? We'd love to have you come be a part of our family at Family Church. GoFamilyChurch.org has all the information you need to get here. If you don't live close by, remember, you can follow Family Church on Facebook or Instagram. Before we end for today, would you consider partnering with this ministry by giving financially? If you're feeling led, just click on the Give tab at the top of the page. That's all the time we have for today. Know that we're looking forward to our next time together with Pastor Jimmy Scroggins, right here on the next edition of Family Church Radio.